Okay, so is it just like a hi?
Yeah, perfect.
I'm okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Emma Goetz, and I'm a nursing student at the University of Northern Colorado.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time to do this interview.
Yeah,
We
of course.
are very interested to kind of just hear your story of what it was like to, one, be in nursing school during this and trying to do clinicals and just get through the work, but also your thoughts on healthcare and healthcare education for the future related to the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember we were about to go on spring break, and we were all kind of talking. It was kind of all up in the air of like, okay, well, we don't really know what's going to happen, but like, we'll keep you posted. And so we went to spring break, and I remember I was still working, and I picked up a bunch of shifts, and everything seemed fine. Like, even thinking back, like they had us redo like our hand washing training, so they just kind of like watched like watch us do that, and then everything kind of broke like that following week of like, yeah, we're not going to be able to go back to clinicals, and we're going to switch to all online. I think we had originally gotten the email from our president, and then at that point we kind of everything just switched. And then I got the call from my workplace that the first case was there, and I definitely broke down. I had a kind of an ethical dilemma for a couple weeks. Like that was kind of like the first, like, oh my gosh, this is happening.
Right.
And then I kind of, like, my shift was coming up. I had a shift that week, and the morning of, I like woke up and I was just so emotional. I was so scared. I was feeling all of those like really heavy emotions of like, we don't fully understand what this is. We have the CDC kind of flip-flopping every other day. Like, it was kind of being updated by the hour, it felt. And so I kind of just called work and I said, I don't know if I can do this. I was worried about my asthma. And so that was like a really hard call, and I'm still struggling with it now. I've been I haven't been working for about 2 months.
Wow.
Um, but in terms of the school part, we switched to entirely online lectures. We didn't even have Zoom sessions during class time. And so it was completely self-directed, which is really hard, going from, we're in the classroom 3 days a week plus clinicals, to, okay, you're on your own completely. And I wasn't going to work. So I really had like no structure whatsoever, which is incredible. It's just hard, and I think we take for granted like how comfortable that structure is. And as much as we complain about it, like, oh, we have to show up, and like, it's nice to be able to sit in a classroom with your nursing cohort and be like, okay, cool, we're all kind of doing this at the same time.
Right.
When we were doing all the online stuff, it was like, I would only talk to the couple people that I had like their phone numbers, and we had a group project. So really I was only talking to like such a small percentage of the cohort. And so it was just a very like limiting feeling. And I think like overall the whole experience of like, I don't get to see my 36 people. I don't get to go see my clinical instructor, my clinical group, and get that contact time. So that was, I think that was really hard, just not having that physical, because
Right.
so much of nursing is that hands-on. And so I think that's where I really felt like we were like maybe 4 weeks into doing the online, and I was like, I just want to like see my patients. It's one thing and so we did virtual clinical. That's kind of how we made up those hours. And that was nothing close to walking into a patient room and kind of getting the context, and then seeing that family dynamic and seeing that patient and getting that time. Like, it's been 3 months since I've talked to a patient. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So that was definitely, and they did the best they could. I don't think that, what else were we supposed to do? The hospitals were like, you can't come in, and I wouldn't want to either. I mean, like, again, I don't want to pass it on to anyone. I don't want to get sick. I want to pass it to my boyfriend or my family. Like, a lot of considerations. And again, like at that time, and still now, we there's very little we know. And there's still a lot of research to be done. And we're kind of just going off of basic research, which again it's just how it goes. Like, there's no how are we supposed to get like the full details of something that we're still actively battling right now. So I think given the circumstance, they threw everything they possibly could at us, but it was such a screeching halt of like, okay, go to spring break, we'll see where it is. And then all of a sudden it's like, no more patients, no more clinical physical time. Like, just stay in your room and do your thing.
Exactly. Stay online. It's so hard. And I know both as going through nursing school, but then also I was a nursing professor for years. And I know it's that camaraderie that you have with your cohort that you're working with. I mean, it means nursing school's hard and you need that support. So
yeah.
So I absolutely can understand how difficult it is. Have you guys done things on the side, been able to, everyone has a little Zoom fatigue as it is, but were you able to get together with any of your classmates?
So we had a group project in foundations, and so we got on Zoom a couple times for that. And with everything, I've been able to see a couple people in person, just kind of one-on-one, pretty separate. But yeah, no, I haven't seen, we haven't been a group in so long.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the future of education? So you're in the very beginning of your nursing education, but what are you feeling like? Was there any preparation for this, or how do you think your education might change because of this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about we're planning on going back, as per normal in the fall, and I think that just makes me nervous because now that we know all of it, I mean, we knew about the flu and other things that, wash your hands and don't touch your face all the time. So that part of it isn't new, but it's now this kind of like, we're going to be sitting next to each other. Like, well, where have you been and what have you been doing? And like, who have you been in contact with? Like, it's kind of brings that to the next level. And so I want to think that over the next couple months, it'll be we'll plateau and be at a better space so that when we go back in the fall, we're not all kind of looking at each other like, I don't know, I want to hug you, but I don't know.
Exactly.
So that'll definitely be different to kind of introduce back the physical environment. And I don't even know if we're going to try to do we're already stuffed in a room as it is. I mean, thinking back to it's a tiny, tiny classroom with 36. And even though that's such a small portion of the applicants at the beginning, it's still a pretty big group,
Right.
And so that'll be interesting to see what ends up happening. But I think on the education side, we didn't plan for virtual clinical, and even ATI, they only had limited modules, which is the system that we were using.
Right.
And it's better than nothing. So again, I really don't have that complaint of oh my gosh, I know it's unfair. I don't want to, I'd rather be thankful for the things that we did have rather than, oh, well, we should have been, get up in hazmat suits and go into the clinical site and put everyone in danger. I mean, that's not really realistic either. We're liabilities as nursing students as it is. So it just kind of brings it to a new level. But virtual is nothing like the hands-on that we need.
Right.
And I was even thinking as a senior, I would be so nervous going into the clinical or going into my job, my first real job, because I would feel so robbed of that last semester, because that is such a preparatory stage as a nurse, is that you kind of get on your choice floor if you can, and then you kind of are doing that. And and mine was on med surge. That was my rotation this semester. And I feel super robbed of all of that, potential IV practice time and even watching more surgeries and all the things that I was doing and watching doing med passes and pushing meds and stuff like that. I definitely, I'm going to feel, I'm hoping that in that 5th semester, I can make up for that. But I would not, I mean, as a senior, that's your time. That's really your time to hone in. And that makes me nervous because it's an advanced med surge. That's basically how it starts out. And so now I'm nervous because I'm going to have to do a speedy crash course when I'm in 5th semester. And then for students, I think we only got 4 weeks in clinical. So that would have been that advanced med surge. And so now we're gonna, I don't even know what that looks like, but it's just, it's so unfortunate. Just trying to, even thinking about people who are in OB and peds. Like that is such a specialty. You can only go see it. I mean, like a virtual childbirth. I mean, what does that look like? You know, that's just an experience that like I feel like you'd have to see in person to really feel like the nursing magic of it.
Right.
Because you're not going to get that from just watching it.
Right.
So yeah, I think going forward, maybe we should work on enhancing some of those, but then again, like that would involve maybe filming real things, and then HIPAA gets involved. And even then, like there's something about being there physically, and being there with a crying family member, or being there with an excited patient because he's being discharged today. Like there are just so many unique experiences that you have to get from that, like extra, we're here in this moment, and like this is your life. Like this isn't just like a simulation where like I'm gonna log out of this module and like go watch Netflix later. Like no, like you're there with that person, and this is real life, you know. And I think like you can't replace that. And so I'm not really even sure what, you know, I would say like maybe enhance that, but can you? I guess that's the question, is like, this is a hands-on profession. And I think it's just kind of, well, I guess we just have to take a step back and hope that we can all like hit the ground running 2 times as fast when we can get back on the clinical site. But, yeah.
It is very interesting. It's so dynamic, and it takes, when you do those virtual clinicals, it really takes that personalization and that uniqueness away, and that is hard.
Well, and they want you to say a certain answer too. Like they're looking for like, oh, that was wrong. And you're like, I don't know. Like, you know, and to see some of those, like, okay, I see why ATI said that wrong. But again, like nursing is a human science. Like you really can't sit there and expect, like, we're not getting trained like, you know, like soldiers where like one right answer or nothing. Like it's
exactly
in that dynamic aspect that you're talking about. Like you have to develop your own skill set with that empathy and that nursing judgment. And like ATI kind of takes that away, or virtual clinical at all kind of takes away that, like, okay, I'm going to think through this, and like, how would I respond? Would I respond with humor right now? Would I respond with a little sarcasm? Like you, like that's all part of that personalization that you're talking about, of like, that's something that you develop even at the beginning stages as like a baby nurse. Like you start to do that with your patients, you know, and the virtual is like, well, that's not quite appropriate right now. And you're like, okay, well, you can say that, I guess, but
I remember those ATI answers. I'm like, well, that's what I would have said. And
right.
It's hard.
And in our clinical, like we used to have debriefing, like on the clinical site. So we switched those over to Zoom, and we would all get on the Zoom call and be like, so what was that? Like, what?
Well, that's good. At least that got you that chance to kind of talk about it. And
and that was actually really helpful to kind of go through like the virtual clinical side, and then meet up with our groups that we were doing like the on-site clinical with, and then kind of connect over that a little bit. So that was definitely nice.
Well, and I'm sure there was a lot of humor with that too, considering
definitely.
I know what some of those answers and the noises those things make. So
well, and our clinical instructor is like an ED nurse, so she's just like, okay.
Very interesting.
So,
has it at all changed your desire for going into healthcare? Has it strengthened it or diminished it in any way?
I think it's done everything on the spectrum. I think it's definitely broken down to the core of like why, because you see this and you see the way that the general population is responding, especially in the beginning. It was like, well, this is what you signed up for. And I remember feeling so hurt, because I was like, that is not what you sign up for. You know, like Frontlines isn't all healthcare, but that kind of brought me to another point of like, well, then maybe if that's, you know, if you don't feel that heart desire of like, get out on the front lines and do your thing, then that's probably there for a reason, right? Because there are plenty of people who feel that way, who feel that draw. But I think it's just like, and I already knew that pre-COVID, of like, you need to find your niche, and you need to find where your heart's going to be most happy in nursing, which is what I love about nursing, because it's so flexible. There's so many different areas. But I think this just proves, you know, be more creative in how you think about it. Like maybe floor nursing, like out the gate, maybe isn't for everyone. And I think like the more I go through nursing school, it's like, absolutely, like find your interest. And that doesn't have to be the generic, oh yeah, and I started on the med surg floor, or oh yeah, like I just automatically wanted to do the ICU. Like maybe that looks different, you know? So that's kind of exciting almost to think about like all the other alternatives that I might not have thought about if I wasn't faced with this sudden issue of like, right, so that's what the front lines look like. And that's what that obligation or that responsibility looks like. And so I think it kind of challenges that thought of, are you going to follow the generic, or maybe think a little more creatively about like, what if a pandemic happened again, or what does that look like exactly in whatever specific specialty that you choose. And I think like during our discussion that we had a couple weeks ago, it was, the OR nurses are being furloughed. And that's crazy, where, ICUs are like scrounging for nurses. So it's interesting to see kind of that difference of specialty. Whereas like on an oncology peds floor, they send out anyone who's positive because of that immunosuppression. And so I think it's just interesting to kind of see like how those factors play into those fields where I wouldn't have thought like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Right. And kind of like taking it to the next level of like, oh, that's what that means. I think it's almost pushed I don't think I'm just persuaded. I don't think I want to drop out. I'm not like, oh no, this isn't, I don't think it instilled that kind of like that level of like, oh, I can't do this. I think it was just, let's reevaluate maybe some of your preconceived notions about being in nursing and be more creative about like where we're moving forward. So it's all good.
That's good. Yeah, it definitely, I think it's run the full gamut of feelings for a lot of people. So,
well, and honestly, I think I feel almost blessed to have had this experience happen before I was in, my 20 years into my career. And I was like, oh, I never realized that this is what that was.
Right.
And we're seeing that too, of people who are like, that's not what I signed up for. Like, I didn't realize that was because there is a difference between pandemic times and normal times.
Exactly.
It's not all the same. And I think there was kind of this like overwhelming response of like, but that's just what you do. And it's like, not normally. Like, that's not what we get trained for sure. Like, it's out there. We know it's a possibility, but to kind of see it in action and kind of get some of those nuances is such a blessing. It is such a leg up in terms of looking at the long term of nursing, of like, what could my career look like? Not just in the first 5 years, but, what if something like this happens again? Or what if, another mega virus like comes out and wreaks havoc on something else? Like, what would that look like? And kind of trying to emotionally prepare for that. Because I think there is a difference between, and I've had to like kind of reconcile this within myself now, is I look at being a CNA right now and I'm like, well, if I got sick and I passed it on to my parents, or I passed it on to someone, like I am in my second semester, or I just finished my second semester of nursing school. That is a lot that's a lot of risk to put on someone. Right. But if I was 10 years into my nursing career, I think I would feel differently. I do. I feel like I would feel like, all right, get me the right materials and let's do this. I feel like I would definitely feel differently. And so I've tried to give myself a little grace, because I've been really hard on myself. I mean, you see all these people who are like, let's go. And I'm like, I got so scared and I called my job and I was like, I can't.
Right.
So I'm trying, and I'm trying to understand that. I'm trying to understand where in me, I'm like, because that makes me really nervous. That makes me doubt like my true integrity as a nurse, like, am I meant to be here if I'm not ready to jump into the front lines? And so trying to kind of deconstruct that a little bit and be forgiving on myself and be like, well, maybe that's just not you, and just because you're not one of those people doesn't mean you're not going to be a great nurse, which I think is a good reminder for people, because it's a really, and a lot of the girls in the cohort are jumping on the front lines, and that's great. And, like, if you feel that way, awesome. I just am a lot more scared.
Yeah. So, I think that, and you have to respect that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to weigh your own, what you have going in your life and your risks and that type of thing. How does your family feel, and how is your family reacting to all of it?
My dad is absolutely like, please do not. Like, he was like, if you can avoid it, just do it. Like, because he saw all the stories of the early CNAs who weren't quite, PPE wasn't as prevalent and available, and it was still like very unknown. And he's seen stories of like 20-year-olds dying because they were CNA in a long-term care facility. And, he saw that and he was like, not even close to worth it. Like, there is not, you are so young in your career. Like, and CNA isn't what you're aiming for, like nursing.
Right.
And so I guess like that's where, like, yes, of course, like I want to get that CNA experience and I want to be able to help, but I just like, there's kind of that unspoken, like you still have to take care of yourself. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. And I think, I don't know, it's kind of like it, and I asked my clinical instructor, because I was so conflicted, like in the first couple of weeks, I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I feel like an awful person. I feel like I'm abandoning people. I feel like I'm not being a good team member. And like, nursing is all about teamwork. And I had all of this like guilt, and my clinical instructor was like, it's a very individualized decision. No one at this point, no one can tell you what's right or wrong. And you just have to stick with what you feel is right. And so that definitely helped guide me. And I definitely called on my parents. I was like, well, what do you think I should do? I mean, like, it's such a difficult, like, it's complete unknown waters. I don't think anyone expected coming into this and being like, okay, make this major decision all of a sudden. And so, yeah, my parents are more on the side of like, hang tight, like learn from this. And then once you're a nurse, like keep it in mind, and so that, and they're very supportive either way. I think I've definitely still been, I think I crave work for the routine right now, because my summer has just literally been trying to focus on faith or focus on trying to like review some of those concepts. But it's really hard when, I miss the grind. I miss being in there, having that patient contact, going to classes, seeing my cohort. I mean, like, there's so many things about the routine that was just so comfortable. And now that we can't have that, and I'm trying to be really respectful of the social distancing and staying home and trying to be as good of a citizen who's, do my part,
Exactly.
But, yeah. So I completely, like, the quarantine fever is what I think is a term that's been going around, of just kind of being stuck and feeling like, oh my gosh, like this is going to last forever. Like, when is it going to be okay again? And I think from the conversations that I've had, I think a vaccine is pretty much where people feel comfortable. But even then, I mean, it's so hard to tell. I think it just really changes everything going forward, and taking it day by day is probably the best thing to do, even as hard as that is, trying to think about, I only have 3 more semesters until I'm thrown into this kind of environment. But it's like, all right, just take it day by day, give yourself some grace, like try to learn as much as you can, be educated.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's great. Well, and so with nursing, so often our reward for nursing is what we see with the patients and being with them. So how did you get through doing all this online stuff and not really have that reward of being with real patients?
Right. I think I definitely missed it. I just definitely felt that missing part of it, because we're researching all of these conditions. And I guess I was just trying to think about, trying to visualize it in my head. Like, right, I'm a med-surg nurse and this is my patient that comes in. What am I looking for? What kind of psychosocial things am I going to be paying attention to? What's the timeline for this condition? Things like that, where I can kind of like try to hold on to those clinical experiences a little bit and think, okay, I just got on the floor. Here are these patients. What are your first things of action to do, and what things are you going to be looking for, and trying to like kind of put it in that realistic mindset, rather than, okay, we're just learning about this condition today and like get through your modules, because a lot of it felt like that going through it. But I think trying to study it, I was trying to definitely put those pieces together. But again, even now it feels so missing. And I can't wait to get back on the floor and be like, oh my gosh, I've studied that. Like, like here it is. Like, I've been waiting for this. So I think it'll give me, like, because I was so scared in my first 4 weeks. I think by week 4, I got just a little, like, enough comfortable that I was like kind of excited to come back. Like the
Uh-huh.
first day I was so scared. I was so scared. And my friend that we carpooled together, she's like, "Why are you so scared?" I was like, "I don't know."
Uh-huh. No, I remember those
So
feelings.
yeah,
I
yeah. And
agree.
so I think now I'm not even gonna waste my time with worry. I'm not even gonna waste my time with the nerves. I'm just gonna say, this is an opportunity. I'm gonna have to take it. Like we only have 12 hours today.
Right.
And and we had 6 weeks stolen from the clinical.
Wow.
We were only 4 weeks in, which is it's just devastating. It's just
Mm-hmm.
devastating to think about the growth that I could have had,
Right.
in that comfort level on those floors. And I was lucky enough to get an OR day, which was amazing and completely changed my perspective again on the
Uh-huh.
specialty.
Right.
Because I
Right.
honestly went in and I said this during a debriefing. I was like, I did not realize that not you can start out in different places than med surg, because that's just what I heard is like you
Right.
have to start on the med surg floor. Like,
Yeah.
and my nursing instructor was like, "Where did you get that?" And I was like, I don't really know.
Yep. That's
It
what
was like
people
it was
say all the
so
time. Yeah.
right. And so it's so powerful to get that experience. And I think and I have like OB and peds, but even then I'm gonna jump in and just like go for it and take
Yep.
every opportunity. Like I think it just kind of, I mean, similar to our patients, right? They're forced to just stay in that room, and their whole life and perspective has suddenly changed, and they have a lot more other stressors, because they're sick and they have insurance and family and everything like that. But I think in a way, like or just every nursing student that's kind of in this boat, like we're kind of confined in that
Mm-hmm.
way. And I think we can kind of look at it like, and now it's a better perspective on maybe what they would feel. Is
Right.
like they're suddenly stuck and they know why, maybe, after some education, but
Mm-hmm.
to have that renowned like view on walking out those doors and saying, "Oh, I got out of that,"
Right.
maybe that's a stretch, but I think like trying to make the most of this experience moving
Mm-hmm.
forward, I think is all you can
That's
do,
good.
really, because otherwise it's just devastating. I mean,
Right.
I feel like everyone has lost so much. We've lost so much time, so many
Mm-hmm.
experiences. Just, I mean, like the weather is so nice out. And
Right.
I want to be at Water World. I want to be doing all those things, but we have to just call it what it is, be respectful. I think have respect for the disease. I feel like a lot of people just aren't being respectful of the science and
Right.
the reality. But I think as long as we have respect for it while we need to, and then once we get that vaccine and, we kind of feel like the coast is clear, then just take advantage of
Mm-hmm.
everything we possibly can.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. How has it impacted you personally? Obviously, kind of what you were just mentioning, but
Yeah.
anything else that's really impacted how you're going by your daily life?
I mean, I just feel so stuck, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of, I feel like I've been trying to go outdoors a little bit more, but so is everyone. So I'll go to like Windsor Lake and there's
Uh-huh.
so many people. And so I'm like, I have my mask on. I'm like trying to stay away as much as possible. So I think
Yeah.
it's just trying to keep, but keep that perspective. And nature has been one of those things where it's like, and there's a greater picture here. There's more. It's just that like visual reminder of like, this has happened before, it'll happen again. And we just have to get through this. And
Right.
I think the internet has been like a good place and equally a bad place. So I try to kind of be very careful.
Uh-huh.
I think it's definitely got the best of me, especially in the beginning, seeing all those comments really harsh of like, well, this is what you signed up for and I can't believe you're complaining. And like,
Mm-hmm.
this is on you. Like you're part of the conspiracy. Like that was so disheartening.
Right.
Because there's so much disrespect in nursing already from the general public because they don't understand.
Right.
But to see that so blatantly and so aggressively at the beginning was really heartbreaking. I definitely, my mom was like, "Why are you so upset about this?" And I was like, "Because this is my future. Like this is my future career." And to think that people like really, even if they don't mean it, like even if they're just scared and upset, which is really why they would even be saying
Mm-hmm.
that, it's just making people who are already understaffed and so stressed and deal with burnout. And like, it is already a very difficult profession to make us the scapegoat. I was so heartbroken. I really was. It was really disheartening to see that. But I think at the same time, it's been really powerful to see how people are still showing up and still trying to make a difference every single day despite everything. And as a nurse, I think that's probably my daily goal is just going to be make the best of the situation and then go home and call it a day. Because that's all we can do. You know, we can't, nothing we do will like single-handedly be solving anything. Right. And that's the truth. Like nursing is a team effort. And I think it's going to have to be the same way with this. We're going to have to take it one patient at a time, one test at a time, you know, one educational post at a time and just try to get through to people. But I mean, this is our job. This is what we do. And I think I can definitely carry that kind of that optimism of, you know, people will listen. And I think in Colorado, we did see that people were staying home initially, at least. I know it's kind of dropping off a little, but the numbers are dropping and that's really hopeful. So there are people who are willing to listen. There are very, you know, like receptive people, as much as the media wants to focus on all the people who are saying, you know, you're taking away my rights and doing the protest in Denver. That was upsetting. But it's all about that education. And I think focusing on the people who are listening, but not necessarily giving up on the people who aren't, because it's all coming from a good place. I would hope that it is, you know, they're just scared and they don't know. They're in the same boat. They're just processing it different. And I think trying to have as much understanding, as frustrating as it can be, trying to be understanding. And you are still potentially one of my patients, you know, but even then trying to think about how I would deal with a COVID patient right now. And kind of asking some of those questions of like, you know, where have you been in the past 2 weeks, you know, because it takes about 1 week to incubate. And, you know, having them say, yeah, well, I was protesting my rights. It's like, well, now you're here and you're putting everyone else in danger. And that's really frustrating. So trying to think through some of those ethical dilemmas of like, so how would you deal with that? You know, and I mean, we talked about that with like substance abusers or like some of those like repeat patients who just keep coming in for the same thing. Like, how do you deal with that, you know, and trying to have that compassion, but also realizing like that's still a cry for help in some way.
Right.
And so trying to think through some of those scenarios of like trying not to just let the biases take over of like, oh, you're just not listening. But that's still a patient that we need to educate, you know, and trying to stay strong on that integrity of, and this is our community. These are our people. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, you've had some really, really good insight. I very, very much appreciate everything you've contributed to this.
Yeah, I've had a lot of time to like think.
Exactly. No,
it's all just here.
That's wonderful. Well, I can't even really think of any other questions. I feel like you've addressed everything, and I just want to thank you so much for being part of this.
Of course.